because if you were to come and say you want to work at the rec center, and we have tons of opportunities. Anybody want to raise your hand without looking at the book and tell me what you know right now about the rec center? So recreation and parks for Rutland. Anybody have anything?
I know the Rutland Community Theater.
Awesome. That's
Or fellowship
yes,
there.
that is awesome. Yes,
You could string this up
Yep,
under
sure
your
will.
shirt. So we, yep, like that, good.
Okay.
And then put this in your pocket.
Yep.
So we get really good audio on you.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
You are so welcome. Okay, so Rutland Youth Theater, correct. We have a very large program for our Rutland Youth Theater. In fact, last night they were going through auditions for Newsies.
Are you guys like a big part of the sports department too?
Yeah, so we do all the sports. So if you've ever played baseball for Rutland Rec, maybe football, soccer, baseball, swimming, the swim team in the summer, perfect. Sports. What else would you maybe know about recreation and parks?
Can I say?
Yes.
I just made it. Oof. I think that I see a lot of recreation vehicles at the parks, like maintaining the parks.
Correct. So we have maintenance department as well. So they maintain all of our parks, and we have 8 parks, and we have 4 facilities. Facilities. What would be the difference between maintenance or a park and a facility? Anybody have an idea what the difference of those two would be?
Park is outdoors, and then the facility would be an indoors building.
Correct. So I'm asking all these questions because I'm assuming we're going to play this little role play right now that you're coming for a job. Now, I have hired in my career over 500 teenagers. Okay? I worked in Cincinnati. I was a director there at a YMCA. So I have hired over 500 teenagers, which means I have interviewed over 500 teenagers. Just this past summer, because we opened 2 new pools. How many knew that White Pool just reopened? Okay.
Twice this summer.
Oh, awesome. So I run that, and I run that because my background's also in swimming, but I hired all those lifeguards. I'm actually in a really cool position because Rutland High School lets me do the YES plan here. So I do a lifeguarding class. So I actually hired, just me, myself alone, hired over 60 kids this past summer for jobs in sports, counselors, lifeguarding, swim lessons, instructors. Okay? Now, here's our role playing. We've gone over a couple things. We have maintenance jobs. We also have seasonal jobs for our maintenance departments. We had about 8 college kids, high school kids, happen to be all male, doesn't always have to be, but they were responsible for cutting grass, maintaining our fields, and they looked up to what we call managers or program directors, all right? So we hired them, so we have the maintenance, we have sports, we have theater. So you might come to me, and I get this a lot, a kid walking in and asking me for a job. I said, well, what do we do? And I get a blank stare. What do you think? Who would have approached that differently, just walking into the rec department? Tell me something differently you would have done. So I want you to think. This is going to be like a 30 seconds. I want you to go in your mind and think, how I want a job. I'm going to a rec department. What am I going to do first? What am I going to do first? All the way in the back.
You gotta do research before you go apply for the job.
Yes. Even walking into my door. Don't just walk into the door and say, I want a job. Okay. Now, I'm dressed like this today because I got this at the last minute. Mrs. Patterson knows me, and she's like, Kim, is there any way? No, it's fine, but I dress like this probably 50% of the time. I am a rec superintendent, so I'm out in the field. I go to parks. Yesterday I was in a really nice outfit because I had to present to the Board of Aldermen. So every day is a little bit different for me. But a child or a high school or a college kid comes in and they're dressed maybe like this, and they say, I want a job. Okay? Research is important. How you present yourself. Okay? You don't need to come in a suit and tie and a dress, but maybe something a little more presentable, not athletic shorts and a shirt that you just worked out in. I can tell you right now, I had over 10 high school kids come into my office. It looked like they just got done with the workout, which is great. We are a rec department, but you're coming in and you're making a first impression. It's the first time I've ever met you. Okay, so then we talk about research. So what kind of research would you do?
See like what they do, like what they do to help, like just so you know like what you're getting into before you find a job.
Right. Because in the rec department, we have so many different things. Well, do you want to do maintenance? Are you sports oriented? Are you theater oriented? Where are your gifts? Okay, and you guys are young now that you're starting to figure out, what do I like to do? And I'll use some examples later with some of the current high school kids I have and how I lead them in the right direction. So they might say, well, I know I like to work with kids. I am great with kids. And then within the first summer, they're like, yeah, that wasn't for me. Okay, and so we have to have that self-awareness of where do you want to go next. And it's okay to switch. You know, it's okay to kind of move into that other direction. Okay, so going back to research, what I did is I handed you guys, each one of you, these are our brochures. So we do 2 of these a year. These are our upcoming one. What I want you to do right now is act like you're coming for a job. At the end of an interview, typically the person interviewing you are going to say, do you have any questions for me? And I'm going to tell you right now, you better have some questions. Okay, so right now I want you to go through that Go Play brochure I gave you, and I want you to write down what questions you would ask me. Okay, so we're going to do, I'll give you like 2 minutes, a little bit of time to look through there. You're doing your research right now. Come up with 2 to 3 questions.
You could write your questions on your whiteboard, or if you can memorize them, that's cool too.
Do you ever watch the tournament? Like,
I'll talk about that.
watching wrestling? Like,
I'm actually the one who started that program.
that was the most adorable thing ever to watch.
My son helps coach it because he's a wrestler here.
I love that. Can that count as a question?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because you're asking me, because I'm the boss, do you go to these programs?
Yeah.
Okay, so something like that.
Hey, is that Luke? No. Hey, that's Logan. My baby sit back in.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
All right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do a little bit of role playing, like I said, and I'm going to, if you're willing to volunteer, to come up, and we're going to be ending the interview, and I'm going to ask if you have any questions. After you ask the questions, I'm going to answer it, and then I might give you some feedback as to how I may have wanted you to reword that in a more positive way. You want to be so positive going into an interview. All right, and we're going to go into some other really good examples of how being positive versus negative in a conversation. So who would like to volunteer?
I would.
Okay.
I should probably wash my hands first so they're not sticky though. Okay, I'll be right back, but I really have a question.
Okay.
I'm trying to ask
Okay.
for years.
All right. So I'm somebody else. Come on, this is a good opportunity. All right. Okay, go ahead. So,
I just ask you any question that I have.
yep. So we're ending the interview. You know, do you have any questions for me?
Well, it sounds like you guys have a lot of jobs that you have to offer. I was just wondering if there was anything that I could do to work in more of a indoor environment.
Great question. So we have Giorgetti is one of our complexes, one of our facilities, and in the winter and the spring months, it's a ice arena, and in the spring, it's indoor turf, and then we go to skateboarding. Right now, we're just closing our skateboard park up. So we have opportunities at the front desk, where you actually, it's a great position for high school kids because it's flexible, and you can also do homework.
Oh,
It's one of
awesome.
those jobs where you're at the front desk. So great question about our indoor facilities. Very good, because we have indoor facilities and outdoor facilities. Great question. I wouldn't change anything on that. Okay.
Mrs. Peters, I really enjoyed our interview today, but I've been dying to ask this question. How do you enter the Pumpkin Princess contest? And
Yes.
do you accept a nomination from a 35-year-old princess like me?
This is a great question, and I've just gone through we just went through the process, and you go to your school, and I believe nominations are out there now. We added a prince this year, and nobody from Rutland is doing it, and so I'm not happy. So I'm coming back to Jamie Nichols and saying, please get someone, and we do not want to be the only school at Rutland that doesn't have a prince represented.
Can you do Queen next year?
Yeah, I think we could do Queen, yes. So, good question about Halloween. It's one of our big events, in Rutland. So, what other questions? Give me some more. Okay.
I was wondering how I may help in the arts/theater department.
Okay, so lots of opportunities in our arts and theater because we go all year round. So depending, what I would do is I would ask you, what do you want behind the scenes? What kind of gifts do you have? And then also say, do you want a volunteer basis or do you want a paid position? All right. And then we have camps, and then we have our productions. And I would ask you, then if I felt like you were ready for that next level, you would then meet with our program director that does theater. So, good question. Theater is big. It's one of our bigger, we have sports. People think of rec, and they're like sports, but there's the theater program, which is huge, and we get a lot of Rutland support for our theater. Other questions? You had a question?
Oh, the one I said to you?
Yes, go ahead. So we're ending our interview. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. Do you go to any of the sports like the games or the?
Right. So good question. I am very hands-on, being the boss that people like to call me. They call me the boss lady, but I am the superintendent. So we have different programs, the football right now, soccer is going on. So yes, I do make a presence. I do have program directors that run all the different programs, but I do like to go and watch. I like to see what's going on. And in fact, I just started a program, the wrestling youth program. We started that last year. I have a history in wrestling. My son wrestles for Rutland, so he helped with the program. So I'm always reaching out to high school kids. If you have a gift and you want to come and help, sometimes it's a paid position, sometimes it's a volunteer position. But that's a great question because you want to know how involved your boss is.
Yeah.
So it's a great question. Anything else? Anybody else? Come on. You're here to interview. This is practice.
Ian, what about you? You seem like you have a good question on that post-it.
Hey, Ian.
Yeah, Ian.
Yes, Ian.
So, what type of art should we take?
What kind of art?
Yeah, like record really.
So, the art programs.
Yeah.
So we have multiple of art programs. We have pottery. We have drop-in art where you can just go in and create. So it's always good to look at the schedule and see what's coming up for that week. So that's what this is a great resource for knowing what's coming up throughout the week for art.
You know
Good question.
how I would refine that question, Ian? I think you're asking to do a video on the rec department? Is that what you're asking?
Okay.
So the way to ask that is, you know, Ms. Peters, I would really like to use the skills I'm learning in video to work at the recreation department. Can I do that? Done. And then she'll give you insight on maybe she needs your expertise in video production and videography to video a theater production or video a game or something like that. So I think that would be a way to ask that question better.
Great. So the art of video is what you're getting at too. And that's really not a media we've gotten into very, very much because we don't have the skill set. So we always, well, the way I look at my positions too is I hire people that come in with a certain skill set. They're going to come in and say, I'm good at this. So I'm going to say, all right, what can we do? What can we do to create that? We always want to be thinking outside the box. Okay, no idea is a bad idea. So again, that's not something that we've really looked at. It's a need, but we don't have the resources right now to do that. So we would need people like yourselves to come in and offer that up. All right. Anybody else have questions that they might ask? No. Okay, we'll come back to it. So again, we're talking about that. We are talking to when you walk into my office, who do you see? Is it always going to be the person that is going to be interviewing you? No. Okay, so when you walk in, you can't just assume that they know what you're there for. All right, so you want to walk in, you're kind of gauging, especially if you've never been there before. One thing that I've always done before going to a job interview is I go to the place before my interview, like a day or two before, make sure I know where it's at, make sure I know where I'm going. I might even walk in and say, I'm coming in for an interview tomorrow. Is this where I go? Easy peasy, all right? Good idea. You know exactly where you're going. You're not going to get lost. What if there's a roadblock, a road closure, and you're there? Okay, so you walk in, and your interview's at 9 o'clock. What time should you get there?
8:30.
8:30? What other?
10 minutes early.
Maybe 10 to 15 minutes early. 8:30 might just be a little bit early because you don't want to inconvenience them. They set a time for 9. 15 minutes, 10 minutes before is perfect. Okay? So you come in, and what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? There's 3 people there. There's an office there, an office there, an office there. 3 people are staring at you right now. What are you going to do?
Introduce yourself, ask a question.
Introduce yourself. Hi, my name is Kim Peters. I'm here for the interview. And then they're going to direct you. Oh, great. Yes, they're going to wait for you. Why don't you have a seat? Now, those 3 people may not be interviewing you, but they're watching you. They're watching your every move. In fact, there's many businesses, and I've done it before when I'm interviewing, is I will let my front desk people know I want you to watch them, see what they're doing. Okay? I cannot believe the amount of times that high schoolers come in and they've used foul language in the waiting room. They've done some you just got to be smart. Everybody's always watching. All right? So they've done the right thing. You've dressed appropriately. Again, it doesn't have to be suit and tie. Some people do come in suit and tie. All right? Depending on which job you're going for. But let's not look like you just worked out. I would not go into an interview like this. Okay? So looking presentable, introducing yourself. Thank you. All right, so now the interview has started. But it started 20 minutes late. It's 9:20. You've been sitting there. Are you crossing? What is your body language like? Okay? Again, that's what the people could be watching. Are you irritated? Do you go up and ask, hey, My interview was at 9 o'clock. How would you react to that?
Be calm.
Be calm,
Wait patiently.
wait patiently. Good. Okay, because sometimes things just happen. All right, so you get into the job interview, and what are some things that you're going to really work on when you're having this interview?
Keeping eye contact.
Eye contact, so important. Okay, what else?
Body language.
Body language, very good. Positive body language. I'm going to pick on you. What else would you do? What else would you do? Positive. Be positive. What about some things you definitely will not do? Something you will not do. Something you should really try to stay away from.
Speaking when he's talking.
Right, speaking when he's talking. That's great. He or she talking. Really good.
I've had, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Looking at your phone.
Oh,
If you, and I'm guilty of it as well. Like, you know what? Adults are not immune to this problem, all right? This is a problem. This is an epidemic. We're all. If I know I'm going into a big meeting and I know I cannot resist looking at my phone when it vibrates, I leave it in my office. Same for you. If you cannot, and this is where the waiting room becomes important, okay? I want to know if you can stay off your phone for 15 to 20 minutes. I know it's something simple, and I'm not going to slap your hand for it, but it is something to be cautious of. If you cannot stay off your phone, put it in your car, okay? Keep it in your car, put it in your bag, put it somewhere where you're not going to be distracted. Interviews are going to take anywhere between 20 minutes to an hour. I've never been in an interview with a high schooler that's going to take longer than an hour, or really even 30 minutes. Okay? It's really okay, and actually a pretty cool idea if you're like, oh man, I forgot to put my phone in my car. Ask the receptionist, would you mind holding this for me while I'm in my interview? Huge points. All right? One, you communicated with an adult that you don't know. And then two, you went in without your phone. Great one. It's a good one. It's a hard one. What else?
sometimes my friends call me out on being too excited.
Yeah.
So before I got this big girl job,
Yeah.
I had jobs and they were professional, but they weren't like, I'm in charge of all these kids. So
Right.
I would get excited about something and I'd go,
Ah.
like my hands in the air, and then
Right, it's
people
too much,
saw
right.
a picture of me on Facebook with my tongue out and my hand in the air, and they're like, Christina, that's not very professional.
Right.
Like, sometimes you get too loud and too excited, and people don't like that
Right.
energy. So I had to work on I was too positive.
Right. I know, and that sounds crazy. And I never, with working with high schoolers, and then, like I said, I had to hire 3 new program directors this year, which is a big girl job, or a big boy job. And I don't want to take people's personality away, but first impressions are important. And I never want to strip you of your personality. You know, I want you to be who you are. And we get to that within the interviews too. I want to kind of know what kind of person. It's great to have that positive energy. And I'm really big on that, on not stripping your personality away from you at all. Okay, so the only other thing I really want to talk about as far as interviews go, and then talk about some other things, is before you go in, think about 2 or 3 things that you're really good at. Okay, because you're going to be asked that. It's called strengths. What are your strengths? And this is a thoughtful thing because it's going to change throughout your life, throughout your high school, college, and professional life of what you're really good at, because you're going to find, like, I thought I was really good at this, but I'm actually better at this. So right now I want you to write down 2, 3 words that describe you, your strengths. Okay, so for your teacher, it would be, she's positive. Has a positive spin on. And you want to relate it also to the job that you're seeking. So if you're going for a sports job, you might want to put that you're athletic. That's one of your strengths. When you think about a strength, also think about how you use that strength. So there might be a follow-up question. So one of your strengths could be that I'm a caring person. Okay, give me an example of how you have shown that you're a caring person. I have a strong work ethic. Tell me about that. All right, anybody like to share their strengths? What's a strength? Go ahead.
Being productive efficiently.
Okay, so you are productive. You get things done. Give me an
In like a timely manner. So like if you have like a list of things that you said try to get them all done today, but if you don't, it's okay. But you do
Yeah.
try to get them all done as quick as you can, but not rushing it.
Great. That's a great answer. I don't even have to do a follow-up. You followed it up with why. You backed it up. And then I might say, give me a specific example of a time this happened. And you can use school. You can use a sporting event. You can use a youth theater production. You can use examples in your family life. That's okay because you guys are young. How many of you already have a job or have had a job? Raise your hand. Okay. What do you do?
I'm a cashier at Shaw's.
At where? Shaw's?
Shaw's, yeah.
Awesome.
Work at Subway and Keats and also babysit.
Awesome.
I just worked at Little Caesars.
Great.
I have a voice acting job.
Nice.
You do? I didn't know that.
It's fairly recent, actually.
Yeah. Where are you at?
At called Gingerbread Studios.
That's awesome. Who else has a job already?
I was a cashier and I did construction over the summer. So
Construct's great. Did you say?
I used to work at Lilac for dishwashing.
Great.
I just make videos for a bunch of people.
Awesome. And did you say job? So how many of you have had your job for longer than a year? Raise your hand. So fairly, fairly new. So you're starting to gain your experience. All right. So this is what I call a trap, an interview trap.
Interview trap. Uh-oh.
Interview trap. All right. So pay close attention. You worked at Subway?
Worked at
Little Caesars. All right, so I want you to tell me about Little Caesars. I want you to tell me about a really bad employee you had. Tell me about that person.
Employee.
Yeah.
Woman manager.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. I just trapped you.
Oh yeah.
Okay? You have to be really careful about, because if you're going to talk bad about that manager, who's to say you're not going to talk bad about me?
Okay.
So be
Or just the things that I've witnessed.
right, exactly. And I don't discount. Hi, River, one of my employees.
No way. This is
Yes, it is perfect.
He's an honorary alumni of the video program.
Yeah.
He's never even been enrolled in this class.
Oh, that's great.
Every day.
I know kids like that. So we're getting back to, there is no doubt in my mind that your boss wasn't good for whatever reason it is. Okay, I've had bad bosses. Everyone's had that employee that they don't want to work with. River has lots of them, employees that he doesn't want to work with. So there's always that. But when you go in, and that's a trap because they're going to see how bad you're going to put someone under the bus, and they don't want that personality.
Okay.
So you might use words like challenging. It was a challenge to work with my manager because his expectations were not very clear to me. All right? You don't want to say you were ready. Like you put your clipboard down, you're like, I'm ready to go. I am like, this guy is awful. So I could see it coming. And I'm like, yeah, he's going to spill the jizz, going to tell me. Yeah, you just got to be careful. Okay? So as much as you want to put that person down and you just did yourself justice, remember who you're talking to. You're trying to get a job from me. And if I know you have that, I'm thinking negative. And I learned that just recently in the last 5 years. I've made that mistake. I've gone in when I was in Cincinnati, and I made that mistake when I was getting interviewed as a director job. Luckily, one of the persons that was in this position or in the interview process with me told me afterwards, "You got caught in that trap. Did you hear how negative you were?" So you always want to keep it positive. So when that comes up, tell me an example of a bad employee that you've worked with or a bad boss. Take a breath and see how you can spin that in a positive way. They don't really care.
Okay, yeah.
They're just trying to trap you. So that's the biggest thing. And you guys as high school kids, you're learning every day, and you're going to make mistakes in your interviews. I still make mistakes, when I'm interviewing people. But just be cautious of that trap. That's the one thing I did want to make sure that everyone is aware is you want to keep the interview as positive and as real as possible. Does that make sense? Okay? So it's a hard lesson to learn. It's hard to not talk so badly about like when you really had a really, really bad boss, right? It is hard, but that's one thing that you want to try to stay away from. Okay, so now you have the job. Congrats, you got the job. Now, how do you keep the job? What are some really good things to traits and characteristics to have to keep the job?
Show up on time.
Being on time. Being on time. All right. What else were you
I
ready?
got in trouble my first year teaching because I would show up late, like once a week. I walked into a faculty meeting like an hour late
Yeah.
one time. Mr. Olson was like, no.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was so, I started sweating. It was,
So, and maybe that was like, a characteristic that you had, and that was something you had to work on. Because we're going to have faults. We're all going to have faults. We're all not going to be the best employee. There's going to be faults, and you then have to recognize. So what I was going to say is also recognizing your faults and working on them. So I have, the hundreds of employees that work for me, some are seasonal. I know a lot of their faults, okay? And we work on those. And it's not that I give them free passes because they're late, because we do have some late, River. I'm not late. But in the position that River's in with other employees is that you rely on each other too. So I'm looking to see how you work as a team. Okay, so are you a team player? Are you going to throw people under the bus constantly? I get it. With the 50 lifeguards that we had, 35 lifeguards, 15 instructors, and then I had like 15 counselors. Hey, Kim, River was late again. All right. Then again, River was late again. Okay, got it. I can see too. So be a team player, making sure that you're not just throwing people under the bus. You want to be, don't be a snitch. Now, if it's something major, you should obviously, let your management know. But it is good. So you've got the job. You want to be on time. You want to be a team player. You want to be a good communicator. How many of you had a job but also had other commitments, like maybe sports or if you babysat also? So you had to keep a pretty good schedule as to what else that you were doing. So communicate effectively and timely with your manager. If you know you're going on vacation in 2 weeks and they do the schedule 2 weeks before, you better make sure that you know the process. Okay? What else to keep that job? Anything else that I'm missing that you think about that's really important?
Show passion in your work.
Say that again.
Show passion.
Yes, having passion in your work, that you want to be there. All right, that you want to be there. I'm very fortunate right now in my position as a superintendent that the full-time employees I have want to be there, or they're faking it really good. All right, they come in, they do their work, they're positive, and we create a really positive environment, and we work together as a team. So it's a fun day. And then we have our full-time employees, so also understanding between the different kind of employee that you can be. How many of you just had summer jobs? You only work in the summertime. Okay, so that would be called a seasonal employee. So going into a position like the rec, you're going to come in and say, I want a job. All right, so we already just said that that's not the right way to go in. You want to have an idea of what they're looking for, because we have refs too that just come in and do games on the weekends. Okay, are you in college? Are you in high school? Do you want to be a seasonal? Do you want to be a part-time? Do you want to be a full-time? Do you want to be a contractor? So there's different job titles you can have within that, so you really having understanding. Some kids only want to work in the summertime because they have so many activities. And I also, I talk to these kids, the high school kids, and I also want them to be really, really realistic. I'll get the kids that come in and say, I want 40 hours every week. Okay, great. Well, you're going on vacation twice. You babysit also. You play football, so that means in August and during the week. So again, what else is going on in your life? So you're really honest with that employer of what you can offer them. Okay? So, I've been talking and we did a little bit of role playing, but that's been about 35 minutes. So I want to open it up to any questions and any questions you might have even just about the rec, about the job opportunities that I have. And River can also help with that. River came on. So River was part of our YES plan with the lifeguarding. All right. And so he did our lifeguarding course with 40 kids. It was super fun. They got to be in White's pool, early on before we even opened. And then I knew that River was a different situation too. Do you mind if I use you as an example? Okay. So River pretty much told me straight on he didn't want to work. He told me straight on he didn't want to work. He was just taking the class. Yeah. So I said, great, awesome. And which was totally fine.
He was honest about it.
Exactly, he was, because I asked, because I have all these kids that come, I can't give them all jobs as a lifeguard. So I also help find them jobs. So basically what I did is I had them write all their information out on a paper, and I said, tell me where you think you're going to work. Now, granted, none of them had interviewed with me yet. So they're assuming they're going to get a job with me, which is fine. But I was also very honest. Any new lifeguard, you may not get 40 hours because I don't know how this is all going to go. Depends on your availability. But also Rutland Town has a pool, Wallingford, Killington, and then Rutland Tapestry. So I had lots of options, and I do help fill jobs because I'm one of the only instructors in the area that can teach the class. So anyway, we did that, and River was like, well, I'm not working. I was like, all right, just take the class. Well, I don't know if it was money driven or what it was, but I knew he would be, he wanted a car. So to get a car, you have to have money. But I went to him and I said, gosh, River, you would really be good at this. All right, so I observed him in the class and I liked what he was doing. He was positive. He was a team player because with 40 kids, high school kids, in the pool together, most of them, which I know because like I told you, I have a senior in high school and a sophomore in high school, so a lot of their friends were there. But I knew he would be good. And so sometimes that happens where an employer seeks you out, okay, just by the things that you're doing on an everyday basis. All right, and so River ended up working for me and being a huge asset. An asset because he was on time, he was reliable. I could call him and he would show up if I had someone that wasn't going to be there. Okay, so that's another kind of employer where someone seeks you out. Actually, the way I got this position as superintendent is someone sought me out. They saw what I was doing in Killington. I was at Killington for a little bit. And even more history, 4 years ago, we moved here from Cincinnati, Ohio. So anyway, I was working in Killington. They sought me out to come to this position. So being a good employer is really, really important. Don't burn bridges. And I keep pointing, that was a perfect example. You don't want to burn bridges. That boss at Subway or Little Caesars or wherever might have been awful. But you never know when you're going to cross paths again.
Yep.
It is super huge. And I know for a fact there were certain people that did not get my position because they burnt bridges along the way. Be careful of that. Be really, really careful of that. You want to stay positive. That might be the biggest jerk you've ever met. Okay, but who cares? Who cares? That's their life. Move on. So being a good employer is really important because it's going to provide other opportunities. Even if it's other opportunities within that position. So there are people that were seasonal workers for us that are now full-time employees. When they became seasonal workers, they never thought, I want to work here full-time, but they worked up the ladder and we saw them as good employers, so now they're full-time workers. Okay? I cannot stress enough, being positive, having passion, somebody used that was a great word for your position. All right? Even though it may not be exactly what you want to do, all right, but that means you can be versatile and you can jump into other places. Okay, so now I really am going to open this up for the last 5 minutes for questions. Yep.
There have been times in my life where I really made a big mistake.
Yep.
And maybe burned a bridge. But I was lucky enough that I was given a second chance.
That's right,
and
yeah.
A lot of times in this program, if they miss a deadline, I'll be like, all right, well, we have to work harder at meeting that, so I'll give you a second chance. So can you talk a little bit about, like, if you have an employee and they come in late,
Yeah.
do you talk to them and then give them a second chance, or do you immediately fire them? How do you handle that?
That's I'm not a big fire. I have I call myself what's called an authentic leader. I have a lot of compassion. I've been through it. I've had many different kind of jobs because I raised 4 kids. I left my professional life as a Procter & Gamble, which is a big corporation like GE, to raise my kids. So I've done different things in my life. We do have many conversations. I'll give you a great example of what just recently happened. One of my employees on the maintenance crew, seasonal employee, so he's not there all the time, he flipped one of our mowers. This could have been a very dangerous situation. Luckily, he was athletic enough to jump off so he didn't roll on him. And I mean, this could have been a fatality. That's how bad our mowers are huge. Okay, so he went where he wasn't supposed to. He was trained, he knew, he took a shortcut, it didn't work out for him. Instead, he knew what he did wrong. He's a great employee. Instead of yelling and screaming, I let it go for like 2 days. And I went up to him and I said, I want to thank you. Now again, I'm the superintendent, so I'm like 3 bosses up, and I said, I want to thank you for what you did. It was a mistake, but now guess what we're doing for our seasonal employees? Training better, because we do train, but we now have visuals of each park where you're allowed to take the lawnmower and where you take the weed whacker. So it's a visual. So we train already, but now we train more. And we would not have done that without that happening. So I thanked him for giving us, because in the end it was still our fault, I feel, because what if we missed something? So it made us, our safety team, we have a safety team, went to each park and they drew it out specifically. Tardiness, I do work with, if that's their only flaw, then we definitely would put a process. Maybe I don't put them on the 6 o'clock shift, 6 a.m. shift. I know to put that employee at the 12 o'clock shift. Or if I have the kids that have more of a nightlife and they want to do the morning shift. So I have that flexibility right now with the seasonal employees that we have. So that's a great question. But not every boss is like that, unfortunately. And there's certain circumstances where they can't be like that. If the expectation is that you're there from whatever time to whatever time and there's no flexibility, and you need that flexibility, that might not be the job for you. So as another example, so the white pool, all right, our pool has a lot of flexibility because we're open from 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 at night, and we're open on the weekends. So for lifeguarding, lots of opportunities, right? If you work for the Rutland Tapestry, that's a more structure. You have to be there 9 to 4. 9 to 4, every day, 9 to 4. You don't get weekends, so you don't have that flexibility. So if you like that structure, that's where you want to go. You know every day you're working 9 to 4. At the other pool, the schedule constantly changes. River might work morning shift, afternoon, evening, weekends, but depending on what works for your You have to have a good understanding of what the expectations are. Okay, so if you left an interview and you're like, I'm not even sure when I'm working, you need to really dig into that and say, and that could be a follow-up question. So let's say you left, you go home and your mom's like, so when are you going to be working? I'm not sure. Well, they're open all the time. Yeah, I'm not sure. Follow-up question. That's fine. Reach out through an email or a phone call. Hey, I forgot to ask this. Is the expectation that I'm there from 9 to 5 every day? Or is it a flexible schedule? How many of you would prefer a flexible schedule? Raise your hand. Okay. How many would like more structure? Yeah. So everyone is going to be a little bit different, and you need to understand. And maybe right now you like flexible, but maybe 5 years from now you might say, I like more of a structure. So those are things that you need to be really clear of when you go in and talk to someone, and asking professional questions like that. Any other questions?
This was so wonderful.
Thank you.